Let me introduce the most kind-hearted, generous, understanding, meanest, orneriest NCO I've ever met, the bipolar bear himself, James Stanley. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Kyle Knight. How you doing? The best fister I ever had.
Best fish from the brigade.
Absolutely. The best and underrated, most underrated.
Yeah.
Unappreciated.
That's true. So, what got you into the Army in the first place? Let's hear it.
So it's kind of a funny story. I was hanging out, just being a 23-year-old, nothing, not doing anything, and a couple of my buddies were like, "Hey, let's go down to the recruiting office and see if we can join the military." So okay, sure. Went down there, and of course, the first office was the Army, so we went in there, and after the recruiters are doing their pre-qualification stuff, and they put us on the practice ASVAB, and all of a sudden, everybody started getting real excited. I think I scored like a 60 something on the practice. I've never been arrested for anything, and they got pretty interested. Fast forward to, Monday, and I'm down at MEPS, taking the ASVAB, doing my physical, and I still really didn't have the intention of actually joining the Army. I think I just kind of wanted to see what maybe I could do or what they might offer me. And long story short, they basically held me hostage at MEPS. The career counselor came back like 4 or 5 times, and this was back before everything is now. So, I mean, everything was like handwritten.
What year was it?
So that would have been 2004. I'm sorry, no, 2003. It was like September 2003. And he was bringing me a list of jobs. I ended up scoring pretty good on the ASVAB, so I had a pretty good list of jobs. And my only criteria was I didn't want to be infantry, because when we watch war movies, those guys are always walking everywhere and just getting mowed down. I didn't want to be a tanker, because that seems, horrible to be cooped up in a big metal can.
You're way too big for that.
Yeah, like that's kind of what I don't want to do, and I didn't want to be some desk pogue. So like, what else you got? And he was going through all these different things, and then finally he's like, "Oh, well, we got the scout." And I'm like, what's that? What's a scout? Oh, you guys run around in the woods and little groups, and you ride dirt bikes and you spy on people, and made it seem like we're like ninjas, like Army ninjas.
Did you show that video where everybody's taking jumps in their dirt
No,
bikes?
I didn't see a video, not one. But he kind of had me at that, because growing up, I got to go hunt and stuff with my dad, and so that was kind of a good parallel. So I'm thinking, well, shit, if I could do this for a job in the military, that'd be pretty cool. So I signed up, and that's how that all started. And I was the only one out of my friends that was actually able to join.
Really?
And then I had a 3-month delayed entry program that I shipped out in January.
What was basic training like for you?
I actually love basic training. I got to Fort Knox, Kentucky, which, is an absolute shithole if anybody's never been there before. But we got there in January. It's cold as balls. I was not dressed appropriately. And somehow I ended up getting paired with like the entire Pennsylvania National Guard. So like the rest of my platoon, not all of them, but like a big sizable chunk of our platoon ended up being Pennsylvania National Guard. So they all knew each other. And it was good and bad. The good thing was none of these guys were brand new to the military. So I guess when you join the National Guard, you can actually, serve and do your drills and stuff before you go to basic. So they already kind of had a little bit of an idea of what was going on, and they took some of us, kind of under their wing and just, explained some things to us beforehand. So by the time the drill sergeants actually came and picked us up, we're ready to go. And that was 16 weeks of one station unit training, man. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What was your first duty station?
First duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. Another shithole.
Were you heavy cab at that point?
No. So that was my first introduction to the infantry. It was 19 Cav, which was a mechanized infantry battalion. And so when I first got there, my unit had already deployed. So I got there and that would have been May. They had already been gone since like January, February, somewhere in there. So it was all rear deep when I got to Fort Hood. And I honestly thought Fort Hood was made up of pregnant women, because that was, the majority of rear D. Pregnant women, and I guess now I know, the rear D shit bags, they can't, or people that are getting ready to get out, or injuries and stuff. So my first month in, actually in Fort Hood was probably the worst because they fucked with me nonstop. And it was just insane. But then 30 days, long enough to draw shit from maps and then get on a plane. And then I was in Iraq for the first time. And I had no idea what to expect. It was they didn't do any of that pre-deployment training like they do now. It was basically like, here's your body armor. And then, as I went, I, got some plates and then I got ammo. And then somewhere in, God, what was the name of that fucking camp? Live at Bagram Airfield. And there was this camp where they put you into, your unit comes and gets you. And I was there for about a week, just kind of running around. Did I say Bagram?
You did.
Okay, I mean Bagram. It's
Baghdad?
Baghdad International Airport. Bayat. Yeah, not Bagram, Bayat. And that's kind of where everybody went. That was the transition point at that time. Everybody went in and out through there. So I sat there for about a week and just tried to keep myself occupied and like nervously waiting for my unit that I've never met a single person to come and get me. And one day they showed up and I jumped in the truck and away I went. And that was my introduction to the mechanized infantry. So that was the original, I guess, the doctrinal cav at that time was 1 scout platoon and 1 mortar platoon were headquarters. And then they had, companies of mechanized infantry. So half my platoon was infantry. I had an infantry team leader, section sergeant, platoon leader, and all infantry.
Oh yeah. What was that first deployment like? What kind of operations were you involved in?
So we did a lot of clearance, a lot of movement to contact. It was kind of strange because, again, that's not what we were taught, anything in basic training. But I had an 11 Charlie platoon sergeant, and so we hear gunshots, we're going. We're going to go find them. We're going to go see what's going on. And we used to do a lot of Overwatch. We got assigned, some SEAL teams got assigned to work in our area. And so us and the mortar platoons, we would be their security. So we'd have to climb up these, we call them the hotel buildings. There was like 7 or 8 of them. And they're about, probably like 20 stories tall. And we'd go up there and take over one of the top apartments, and the SEALs would set up on the roof and do their sniper stuff. And then we'd camp out after climbing, 40 flights of fucking stairs to get up there. A lot of that. Big part of our AO became closed to non-wheel vehicles, so I got to experience driving a 113. Which
the bread box.
Yes, yeah, it's like nobody else wanted to do it, and I didn't realize why. Being a dumb private, I'm like, oh, this would be fucking great. Well, driving the 113, I mean, your head's sticking out. Yeah. Driving down Haifa Street, which back then was a total fucking. I mean, just it looked like a war zone. Like you could just see bullet holes and where rockets had hit, tank rounds, Bradleys, and just ripped this place apart. And that's one of our big patrol areas. And so at that point, I really didn't know what we were doing, but I was having fun. Our life was good. We were all. I mean, there's actually a lot of similarities between that and Red Platoon in a lot of ways, because we didn't really give a fuck. We were running around. Everybody had each other's backs, and we were just there to fuck shit up and wreck shop.
Oh yeah, you got any interesting stories from that platoon or that deployment? Anything in particular?
I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, except that was my first real interaction. We started messing around with the Iraqi army and started trying to incorporate them, and I got to see probably one of the best firsthand views of an actual firefight that we weren't involved in. If we were up and doing an Overwatch position, and we watched 2 companies of Iraqi army go at it for about probably an hour and a half, just duking it out with each other to the point where they're running out of ammo and they're resupplying, and they at no point did they realize they're fighting each other. And that was kind of my first clue of, okay, these guys aren't all that squared away.
Did anybody try to stop them?
I think we did, but we didn't have comms with them. We had no way to communicate with them, and we weren't sticking our heads up because they were just getting after it. So no, they were just kind of on their own, and I guess we kind of hoped at some point they'd figure it out. Probably the coolest thing about that deployment was, so back then, if you had 3 gun trucks or more, you could travel. And we were one of the few groups that, so the mortars had 3 gun trucks and we had 3 gun trucks. So we got to drive up to Biop. Shit, they had Burger King. That's where the PX was. So we were one of the few groups that was actually able to go out and do that kind of stuff. So that deployment really wasn't that bad. It really wasn't.
Did you have any encounters with IEDs or anything like that?
No, this was pre. I take that. So this didn't actually happen to me, but there was one instance where we ran into somebody we shouldn't have. We were doing one of those overwatches. It's supposed to be like a 3-day stay behind. So the battalion spun up. It was, I think, 2 or 3 companies of Bradleys, a shitload of guys, and we pulled up down there and everybody dismounted, and then we occupied a space, and then they all withdrew and left us up there. It couldn't have been more than an hour or 2 into it, the SEALs shot somebody. And unbeknownst to us, in the apartment next, like the building next door to us, there was a bunch of bad guys. And the intel guys later on said it was Chechen rebels or something, but I don't know. But all of a sudden, RPGs start going off, and like the windows are getting blown out, and they're shooting shit through the windows. So we had to do a hasty exfil. So we, loaded up, 100 pounds of gear. We're all climbing back down the stairs. And the QRF was all those Bradleys again, and they came rolling through. And hit the courtyard, and all you hear is the 25s going. You hear the coaxes going. Everything's ripping. This was probably maybe a quarter mile up the road or so. It was actually, I think you can still Google this, but anyway, one of the Bradleys hit an IED, a V-bid or something like that. I think it was just parked on the side of the road. But anyway, it disabled the track, just totally took it out. So they had to abandon it. And there's actually pictures of the Iraqis. After we had exfil, the Iraqis were all jumping on it and putting their flag in it and fucking with it. So they sent, I think it was a couple of Apaches from First Cav went and actually blew it up. And I think one of them was a female pilot or female gunner or something. Yeah, they went and blew it up. They're dancing on it and chanting and doing all this shit, and all of a sudden it just explodes. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, you gotta love that.
But that, like I said, that didn't happen to us. It wasn't the point where our vehicles were blown up, because at that point when we were ripping and running, we could still run into cars. Like if they didn't get out of the way, we just smash into them, get them out of the way. We'd carry batteries up in the turret and throw batteries through their back window, and just just get the fuck out of the way. Yeah. We had brush guards. So that was a Mad Max Humvee. I don't know if you've heard about those.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we had homemade armor kits.
Yeah, all the improvised upgrading and stuff.
Yeah, and they weighed a ton. So if you ever want to see a Humvee as a lowrider, that's what they look like, because the suspensions weren't made for that. So all the wheels were tucked, and they weighed a ton.
Those trucks don't have the turbos that the up armored Humvees either. So
no,
like pretty gutless too.
Oh, absolutely. So we were on deployment number 1, and and again too, it was just that deployment. I guess I wasn't married at the time. I was dating this same girl, but I didn't have a sense of family like I did later on. So I had a little bit more. I didn't care quite as much about my well-being, so I was a little more reckless. There wasn't. They used to lob mortars at us all the time. They had these stupid J lenses. That was actually probably okay. That is a good story. So we had there was a couple guys that were mechanics, and they were gonna change MOSs to 19 Delta. So of course my platoon sergeant was infantry, so he thought these guys were just douchebags, right? So not only are they mechanics, but then they want to change their MOS to 19 Delta. So he's obviously doesn't think too much of that, but somehow he gets they end up going out with us on a couple patrols and kind of helping out. So to fuck with him, we take him out in the middle of this field, and there's like it's almost a square box of some type of plant that made like a hedgerow, so you couldn't really see it. And we dropped these guys off. It was 2 of them, and we left them out there in this field. It's probably 100 degrees. They're out there just baking. We go off and patrol somewhere else. They went by the college, or something for like an hour. We come back, and all of a sudden we start hearing gunshots. And so shit, balls to the wall. We all start ripping in there. Well, fuck me if these two mechanics, wannabe scouts, didn't just take out the mortar team that had been lobbing mortars at us for months and months and months and months. So these two mechanics somehow right place at the right time. They shot through the guy's hands, shot through the motor tube, and subdued these two fucking mortar guys. And they're heroes.
Right. That was heroes. Glorious for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The heroes of the deployment. The heroes of the deployment. And I found that pretty funny, but you know what? I always like those guys anyway. But yeah, that was an interesting one because that was totally not what we thought was going to happen.
Oh, so you rip back to America after your first deployment. You go back to Fort Hood?
Yep.
What was getting back from your first deployment like?
It was crazy. So something was wrong with the airplane. So a few of us had to volunteer to stay behind. And it was me and one of the sergeants and another guy. So we didn't have anybody waiting for us, so we volunteered. So we actually came back 2 weeks after everybody. I don't know, I guess a week after everybody else. So we missed all the welcome home ceremony, all the big shindig. So we just kind of quietly came in and there was nobody there. So we walked, nobody had a car either. So we ended up having to walk some ridiculous amount of distance to go to the liquor store and get some booze.
First stop.
Yep. And we made it back. And I don't remember much about that first weekend. I think we were just getting fucking shit faced in the barracks. It didn't take much, got hammered in the barracks. And then come Monday, we checked in, but I think we were still on leave for a little while longer. And then we slowly started acting like we were in the Army again. Like we started doing formations. And at first it really wasn't shit because a lot of guys were PCS and a lot of guys were going to different, because 1-9 was getting stood down. So it was like multiple things happening at once. So it was like a period of probably 3 or 4 months where we really didn't do much Army stuff. So it was kind of a weird deal. Somewhere in there, I re-enlisted and picked Fort Carson. So we did this for a little while, but I had to wait. It wasn't until later on in the year. And that's when we stood up a new unit. And that was 6-9 Cav. That was my first experience with Bradleys. And I didn't want any part of that. That was...
I don't blame you.
Yeah, that was pretty horrible. I mean, Fort Hood itself, it wasn't that bad, but, it was hot. And doing a gunnery in a Bradley in July, August in Fort Hood, Texas, with no air conditioning was probably one of the most god-awful experiences in my Army career. I mean, just being constantly sweaty and disgusting and trapped, in this driver's hole. Because, I had a college boy, E4, he outranked me in time and grade, so he got to be the gunner. And he was quite possibly the worst gunner because he was he had zero experience. He wasn't an E4 because he had made his way through the ranks. He was because he was
fresh out of basic.
Yeah, fresh out of basic, and that guy couldn't do shit, man. He couldn't clear the gun. He couldn't load the gun. Just fucking horrible. And then so we'd have to go every time around. If you fuck up the first time, you get a second chance. So every single table we did, we had to do it twice. And it was 2 weeks of just misery. So I was pretty happy when my PCS orders came through, and I left to go to Fort Carson, Colorado.
That's lucky because everybody tries to get to Fort Carson.
At the time, I didn't know that. I honestly thought, I knew JBLM was a good post, I guess Fort Lewis at the time, and Hawaii was another in-demand one, but I didn't realize Carson was that good. My battalion commander that had come in, somehow I ended up talking to him, and he had come from Carson, and he was telling me about it and said it was pretty nice. But he's also the one that told me that they were wearing ACUs and I should definitely go buy some, so that way when I showed up, I didn't look like an idiot, because everybody else is going to be wearing ACUs. So I'm the only ass clown when I show up there wearing ACUs because, of course, 2nd Brigade, 2nd ID, they wouldn't possibly be wearing those. They're all still wearing BDUs.
Right.
So I get to be that guy, spend all this money on ACUs, and then not even get to wear them.
Hey, that's what happens when you think ahead in the Army.
Oh, yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got to Fort Carson, and yeah, 2nd Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division. So I showed up there, well, somewhere in there. So right before, so after the 2nd deployment, I got to go home on leave, and obviously ended up having a post-deployment son with my now wife.
Well, 2nd deployment.
I'm sorry. So after the first deployment,
okay.
Got some leave, and then my son was born in January. So I got to Fort Carson. I believe I had in processed, and then I immediately went on leave for that. So that was another like weird little scenario. But came home, my son was born. Did the shotgun wedding real quick, just to get the paperwork in, so I can get my BH going, so I can actually afford to, take care of my family.
Right.
Came back to Fort Carson, got my housing squared away, flew back, got them, loaded the rental truck, and moved my whole family down to Fort Carson. That was like over the span of probably about 2 weeks. Got everybody settled in Fort Carson. Now, I did not know at the time that Fort Carson 2-2 was getting ready to deploy. So that kind of sucked. I basically had enough time to unpack the rental truck, and then I'm out in the field doing train up.
Were you assigned to 361 at that time?
I was. Yep.
Okay, so you were
Apache. I was in Apache. Yep. But I did get an interesting welcome. I don't know how long you were in Apache, but I don't know if you remember Sergeant First Class Martin. Does that name sound familiar?
I was never in Apache.
But you were, well, okay, but fifth.
I was I got to the unit when you guys were coming back from Iraq with 361. I was on Rear D for a couple of months.
Okay, so my first platoon sergeant was Sergeant Martin, and he was kind of an interesting character. And he, at the time we had the AC, so eventually we did get ACU stuff. And with the change to ACU, you got to get all your stuff sewn on, right, a certain way. Well, he wanted all the patches and stuff sewn on the vest a very specific way, which was different than, I guess, what I thought was going to happen. So I go up to the sew shop, and right outside, it was B Street. I don't know if you ever went up there.
Oh yeah.
So I go there, and I tell the lady I want to get these sewn on, and she's kind of looking at me. She's like, "What unit are you in?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm in 2-2, 361." She's like, "No, it needs to be sewn on this way." And I'm like, "No, but my platoon sergeant specifically said he wants it done this way." She's like, "No," she's arguing with me, right? There's this little Hispanic dude kind of standing there off to the side, not in uniform or anything. He's just kind of watching. And then he goes, "You said you're in 361, right?" He said, what troop are you in?" I said, "Apache." He's like, "All right, well, I'm Command Sergeant Major Brasino. I'm your Command Sergeant Major." And he's like, "You're going to get them sewn on exactly how she's saying." And so, of course, I'm like, "Well, okay, hold on. Like I received very specific instructions here." And he's like, "No, I'm telling you right now, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to pay for it. You're going to get them done exactly like I'm telling you." So I'm like, "Oh, great. Here we go."
Little man stuck in the middle.
Oh yeah. So I get it done, and I go back to the troop, and guess who's there waiting for me? Command Sergeant Major Brasino. He's in there with First Sergeant. As soon as I walk in, he goes, "Yep, there he is, right there." That was my welcome to 361 CAV.
Oh my gosh. I vaguely remember that guy. I think I remember when Wilson replaced him. He was a cool dude.
Mm-hmm. No, he was. I mean, he wasn't pissed at me. It's just, I'm just trying to, appease one of the hierarchy, one of the higher ups, do what they want me to do. But so yeah, then should have jumped in with those guys, and we did. And the funny thing was, they had just come back from Korea and I guess Iraq or something. So they had like a blend of, like this weird blend of Korea and Iraq. So the guys in Korea, I've never been to Korea, but I guess they do things totally different. And then, of course, people coming back from Iraq, they do things. So this was kind of a weird transition. But that started, I guess, so there was a few of us that had been deployed before, and they were short NCOs. So pretty much anybody with a combat badge went to the board. And that's basically how that all started. So I don't know if you remember any of the Apache guys, but like Sergeant McCready, Sergeant Moore.
Mm-hmm.
So those were my peer, like those guys were my peer group. And there was a few other ones like Sergeant Corral. So there were a few guys that were kind of in my peer group that I stayed with, for quite a while. And actually that's what started my transition to Black Knight, but we'll get to that later. But anyway, yeah, so then started the second deployment, and eventually, December, I guess. That's when we shipped out.
Let's go into
Or
it.
no, shit. That was October, right?
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, that was October.
I was in basic training when y'all were doing it.
Yeah, it was October. That was a 15-month deployment.
Let's talk about it. Where'd you go?
We went to FOB Rustamaya. That was in Baghdad again. And that was I think hands down, that was the worst, just the worst deployment overall. Because IEDs were full on, and not even just IEDs, just those EFPs that they were, blowing holes in everything with. I know Black Knight had lost a truck. We lost a truck. They're blowing tanks up with them. They're blowing Bradleys up. They're taking out everything.
Yeah.
With us, so every time you left the wire, it was just kind of like, we had to vary our routes. We had to stay off the main routes, never take the same route twice, just stuff like that to try to avoid it. But I mean, it was,
you remember the Fister Patton?
I do.
Yeah, he was Apache troop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Patton. He would just tell all kinds of horror stories about. Did you know a guy named Botello?
Yep. And then Function. Yeah, that's the truck we lost, man. That was that's another one that I remember. Route Irish was black. We weren't supposed to go on it. And that we were doing the joint security stations. I don't know if you ever heard anything about those. So they'd set up these outposts, I guess, and they'd have the Iraqi police would be there. And so we would kind of jointly occupy this area. And they would patrol and we would patrol. And so every week we'd have to rotate out between red, white, and blue. And that was when I was talking about the alternating routes. For some reason that time they decided to take Route Irish. And what was I doing? I was on talk duty for some reason. Like our platoon was out. I was in Apache white. Our platoon was out, and so our JSS was directly across Route Irish from Solder City, and 82nd was occupying a JSS, which wasn't that far from us, but they'd get mortar attacks all the time. And we had just gotten done with an iteration of mortars. You can hear them, they were walking them. They didn't hit either them or us, but you could hear them walking closer. And about 30 seconds, 45 seconds went by, and then you heard another boom. And I remember hearing over the radio, contact ID, black. It was Apache Red 4, which would have been, I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but I'd never really heard him talk like that before. And then just trying to compute the fact that I just heard a boom, and then I'm looking at the Blue Force tracker, seeing, I mean, it wasn't that far, less than a mile maybe. And yeah, it took out, so I think Botello was the driver, Function was the gunner, and Sergeant Martin, a different Sergeant Martin, was the driver. We had one of the commo guys was in the back seat, and then the interpreter, and it killed Botello, Function, and Martin. Just took them out, obliterated them. The commo guy in the back, I think he lost some fingers. He's all chewed up. I can't think of his name. I can see his face, but I can't think of his name off the top of my head. And he was all chewed up, and I think the interpreter had a heart attack or something like that and died. It just took out the whole truck.
Right.
Just right there. And then Black Knight had another one. It was Sergeant Balsley, Fuller, and I don't remember who the commander was, but yeah, the same thing. We rolled up on that one, and they just obliterated the inside of that truck. Like it was just nothing but red goo. So yeah, that was the life on the second deployment. I mean, I think we got shot at maybe once or twice, and mostly it was because, maybe just, I think one time they set an ambush for us. One time, I'm not even sure if they were shooting at us, to be honest. It was just one of those things where I think we thought we were getting shot at, so we just acted accordingly. I know one of the ones that kind of sticks out, because recently the anniversary went by, was Sergeant Snell. He was another Black Knight. I don't know if you heard that name before.
I have, yeah.
So I was in Apache, he was in Black Knight. We were at Black Knight's outpost for some reason. I'm not sure what we were doing there. And we were coming back to the FOB, and they were going from the FOB to their outposts. We were crisscrossing each other, and somehow we ended up causing this giant traffic jam. I mean, obviously, you got a bunch of Humvees coming in both different directions. So I was outside of my Humvee directing traffic, and he was opposite of me doing the same thing. And unfortunately, he got taken out by a sniper, probably no more than 50 feet from me.
Is that the guy got shot through the side, missed his place?
He got shot in the head, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, all I've ever heard from that deployment is stories other fishers have told me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we rolled up and helped that platoon take control of the scene. Our medic jumped out and assisted, and then I don't know whatever happened. But while that was going on, I mean, we all kicked out without. I guess it was Black Knight Red, honestly. And then we all kicked out, and we just started kicking indoors and looking for this guy, trying to figure out where the sniper had come from, and never did. But that was kind of one of those. That was one of those weird ones, because that's basically what that deployment was. It was sniper fire and EFPs, which is very hard to prepare for or to combat. I mean, they were blowing holes through our armor, and they were trying to come up with solutions. And somehow we found out that the EFPs didn't penetrate the bulletproof glass. Something with the heat and I guess it turns it to sand or something, so it diffuses the power. So we started welding frames and putting bulletproof glass on the outside of the armored doors.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people realize, is the bulletproof glass on an up armored vehicle is the strongest part of the vehicle. It's counterintuitive, but it's true.
Absolutely, because there was a couple times where they had gotten hit, and then you look at the glass, and the slug would still be in the glass. It wouldn't penetrate all the way through. So yeah, we started welding frames. The mechanics started welding these metal cans, and they'd put them on the outsides of the doors, and they'd put pieces of bulletproof glass, put antifreeze in there, and then seal them up. They're coming with all kinds of weird stuff. You had the Rhino. Have you ever heard of those?
Mm-hmm. With a thermal, that thing that sticks out the front that sets off thermal triggered IEDs.
Yeah, like a 10-foot post with an ammo can with a couple of glow plugs attached to it. Yeah. And then they started figuring that out. You'd set it off with that, and it's still, all the EFP would be angled back and still blow through the trucks. These guys were very clever. I'll give them that. That was very clever. But yeah, they're beating us with, old school technology. It's taking us out. Fucking Patton, that little buddy fucker. Did he tell you what he got in trouble for?
Drinking?
Yeah.
It got a lot of people, I guess. I didn't realize booze was that readily available.
Well, it's funny because I didn't either. Somehow, so we started doing this thing where they would go around and start using this, I guess it was Air Force technology, to start snatching high-value targets using this phone system, and they'd be able to pinpoint where they were using their cell phone. And there was this truck, I forgot what the hell it was called, but it was an Air Force crew that crewed this truck. And the stipulation was every time that truck went out, the company commander had to go with it. And so when the company commander went out with it, of course, the brigade wants to know, division, everybody wants to know what's going on. So the gunner for the commander at that time, he was a great dude, but he didn't speak very clearly. And he was, I think he was from, I think he's Russian, actually. But he spoke with an accent. So they needed someone who could speak clearly on the radio to be the commander's gunner. Somehow we had like 12 E5s in my platoon. And so I like to think it's because I was squared away. I got selected to be the commander's gunner. I don't know what it actually was, but that's what I tell myself all the time. So I got stuck on the commander's truck being the commander's gunner. And Patton, of course, was the commander's driver. And so due to the fact that that truck was actually in pretty high demand, sometimes we would take the truck back without the commander. It'd just be me and him. We'd run back to the fob, we'd refuel it, do maintenance, get it redispatched, get re-outfitted basically. And one of these times, I was in my room. I wasn't even thinking nothing of it. And all of a sudden, I forgot who it was. Somebody came and told me that one of the guys from White Platoon had been caught in the bathroom passed out from drinking. So me being the squared away NCO I am, I go to Patton, knock on the door. I'm like, hey buddy, just in case, you know, if you got any alcohol, you might want to get rid of it because, you know, so-and-so got caught and they're probably gonna be looking. Oh, okay, yeah. And as I'm going back to my barracks room, you know, I see people opening the doors, dumping shit out. You know, apparently alcohol was quite prevalent. I didn't have any, nobody shared with me. So I guess I wasn't that cool. But I got back to my room. I think about 10 minutes later, Sergeant Udell, who's the white platoon sergeant, shows up. And he's like, "Hey, where's Patton?" Like, oh, I think, you know, he's in his room. So we go to his room, open the door. Sergeant Udell, "You been drinking?" Patton, yes, Sergeant. And I was like, "You motherfucker! Like, I was just here 10 minutes ago. You could have said something. I'd, you know, said, hey, go vanish somewhere. You know, go hide or something." But no, but that second hesitation. "Yes, Sergeant, I was drinking." And man, I never heard the end of that one. I got back out there, the fucking company commander, Captain Griffiths. That was his name. What the fuck? And that was my first taste of, you know, like shit people do that you have no control over, but somehow it's your fault. Right?
That's people. Why did I never desire to be an NCO? That kind of shit right there. I want to be responsible for nobody but myself. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That was my first taste of that. You know, I had nothing to do with that. I gave that kid every fucking opportunity, and then and sure, you know. So then we ended up with somebody else driving, and I actually like Patton, and I'm glad. I heard he's doing pretty well now that he's out. So I'm glad that he's got his shit together.
He is ridiculously successful. I will tell you that.
He's doing the unmanned stuff, right?
Yeah, I think he works not for Raytheon, but he works for like a big aviation company, building drones and designing drones. Because he was big into RC aircraft. That was a hobby. I remember him. He'd go to Fort Carson, the big soccer field, and fly his little plane around and stuff. He's like, I just want to do drone shit, and he did it. You know, he's living his dream.
That's awesome. I mean, you know, at the time I was pretty irritated with him, but you know, I'm glad that he's doing well.
Hey, we all fuck up every once in a while.
You know, I had a pretty charmed Army time. I never fucked up, or I never got caught. I never got caught fucking.
I fucked up, but I had some good people watching my back. Sergeant Kalish, where you at?
Yeah. So I never really interacted with Kalish. My interaction was with Bradish. And I always thought he was a real weird dude.
Well, yeah.
He wasn't bad. He was different than what I was expecting. And then, like, compared to some of the other NCOs, I mean, I had Sergeant Egan, who I think now is probably commands Sergeant Major Egan, if I'm not mistaken. And he rode me nonstop. Like, I thought that guy hated my guts at first, you know, for a long time. Sergeant Udell used to ride my ass. You know, ex-drill sergeant, real fucking hard ass. So that's who I, you know, came up with, people like that. And then I met Bradish, and I was just like, huh, this guy's kind of weird. And then I didn't understand this whole fister thing. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know what the fuck a fister was. I'd never seen one.
Nobody understands. That's our problem. That's our biggest problem. Nobody. Why are you here? Why do you exist?
Right.
I don't know.
The first fister I meet was fucking Fauché, which, I mean, that, you know, says, yeah. And then I think Ed Rodman, and he was in Blue Platoon. Campbell, Dahl, you know, some strange, and I really still didn't understand exactly what it was they did.
It was a motley crew. I know all them people. Dahl. I haven't heard his name in a minute.
Yeah. Well, you know, the funny thing was, so at the time, you know, in Afghanistan was the first time I really got to see you guys do what you actually do. But in Iraq, for the most part, there's no real need.
Yeah, there was a fister was completely wasted in Iraq.
Absolutely, and that's
the ROE. Like if we were like, if it was like Iraq War I, you know, back in '93, like or '91 or whenever it happened, like when you had to actually shoot artillery and there was like a set piece battle. That's where our job really, because they train us like Vietnam or Cold War style, shooting up columns of tanks and stuff, and then. Yeah, Iraq, I've heard like nobody got to do their jobs. In Afghanistan, it was a blessing that was the only deployment I did. I actually got to do when they would let me shoot. Got to do what I would do.
Absolutely. Yeah, because Iraq, the first time I'd never seen. I guess there was a fist section, but I didn't know them at the time. I think I heard that name before because they had a Special Bradley, but I didn't really know them. You know, they had no purpose. And then the second time around, I just knew they were, I guess, different than us or some. You know, I think Pat. You know, Pat was a fister, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never. All he did was drive the Commander around. So I had no clue. And then, you know, Bradish, he was just, I thought he was kind of a strange duck.
I'm so glad I didn't do Iraq. They give you all this advanced training, and then they send you there, and you're like a not quite combat guy. You know what I mean?
What's funny because, you know, with this debate about, you know, everybody does each other's jobs, but it really is. What it comes down to is everybody's kind of just doing everybody else's shit to a certain extent. Because we learned, you know, call for fire on a basic level, you know, not as advanced as you guys. At the same time, they sort of treat us like we're infantry because they have us do a lot of the same shit with half the people. And then the infantry, they teach them to kind of do the same shit. They give them the same stuff that we got. So everybody's just kind of this big hodgepodge. And field artillery, so they're not able to deploy their guns. So they're doing the same stuff. I don't even know what MPs were doing.
Yeah, my lead drill in basic training, he was a 13 Bravo. And he never did his job. He was just like, we just kicked doors like you know, everybody else was doing it. You're back at Carson, and you're getting ready for your third deployment. What brought you to Black Knight Troop?
So there's a little bit that goes on before that. So when I came back from my second deployment, I guess that's when my Army time started to change. Because I was in headquarters at the time because I was commander's gunner. So I was in headquarters platoon. Because ever since I'd been there, I'd always been in white platoon. So I came back, and headquarters platoon is a lot different. You know, it's totally different than the line platoon. So everybody else was, I guess, starting to do land nav and retrain. You know, you're starting to get things going again. I'm stuck in headquarters. So the funny thing about that was the XO at the time was my old platoon leader, and it was Lieutenant Blue, and I think he might have made captain. But you know, he's telling me to, you know, I'm trying to figure out what the supply guys are doing, what commo guys are doing, what the NBC guys are doing. I don't have a fucking clue. You know, like supply guys telling me he's doing something. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Then the XO would, you know, how come this isn't getting done? I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is, sir. And he's like, you tell me you can't do your job? I'm like, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Like, I don't have a clue, right? I need to go back to the line platoons because I don't know. You know, that First Sergeant Brown, that was the first sergeant we had. He was pretty cool. And he was trying to get me back to the line platoons. But the problem was there was so many. I think white platoon, I wasn't exaggerating when I said we had 12 sergeants. I mean, we had a shitload. Like pretty much anybody that was eligible to go to the board went to the board. So there was an overabundance of sergeants in all the platoons. So there was no space for me to go. And at some point I ended up going to the board, and I got promotable status before one of the guys from Blue Platoon, Apache Blue, that had been Sergeant Corral. So I took that other spot as a section sergeant there. And that would have been, I guess I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but that would have been before we went to NTC. So were you there for that NTC rotation? Probably January before we went to Afghanistan.
I was in HHT. I was in the squadron talk.
Gotcha. So you went to JRTC though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went with Apache, but I was in Blue Platoon at that time. So that was, you know, new to Blue Platoon. And I was actually supposed to be in BNOC at that time. That's because during that downtime, I had to knock out Warrior Leader course and both sections of BNOC, and I was supposed to be going in January, so they pushed it back. Sergeant Major Wilson said I had to go because I had to be there with my guys, you know, pre-deployment. So I'm pissed off. So
that's
whatever.
Your senior NCO training.
Basic non-commissioned officer course. Yeah, E6. Actually, it was advanced leader course, I guess, at that time. So I did BNOC phase 1, and they changed it to ALC, which is advanced leaders course, and that's where they started to blend, I guess, E6 and E7 stuff together. But so I'd gone to JRTC with Blue, and then we come back, and I was taking leave before I was going to go to advanced leader course. So the person that I had beat out as far as promotion was Sergeant Corral. He'd gone to the board again somewhere during that time, and he'd gotten his promotable status. So somehow I got voted off the island, and I was an extra E6 in Apache. So I get the amazing phone call of, hey, you're going to go to Black Knight, and you're going to be under Sergeant Guerrero. So in Apache, we thought Black Knight were a bunch of fucking ass clowns.
That's what we thought HHT too.
Yeah, we had Sergeant Guerrero, Sergeant Hill, and Sergeant Jacobs. They were all, the drill sergeants. They were all running around acting like they're all bad. We thought they were a bunch of asswat, I didn't know. I knew who Romache was just a couple of times. I really didn't know. I think I knew who Avalos was just from, being around and stuff, but I didn't know anybody really. So I think 2 weeks or something before I was supposed to go to ALC, I get the word that I'm going to fucking Black Knight Red. So I show up Black Knight Red, and everyone's kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at them like, oh, what the fuck, right? No, it was kind of cool at first. The first PT day, Larson tried to kill me.
He tried to kill me too. He does it.
He took off on the fucking tank trails just like a goddamn antelope.
Yeah. In case anybody doesn't know, Sergeant Larson's about this tall, standing up, collegiate
skinny
football player. You expect everybody to keep up with this dude? Come on.
Yeah, he was a machine. He was a fucking machine. But I didn't know. I had no clue. So I'm dying. I think I ended up saying fuck this and stopping. But I think I hung out with the platoon for a couple of weeks. We did some motor pool stuff. We did some land navigation stuff, a little bit of training. But like almost immediately, I was like, okay, so I got Kirk and Gallegos. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. I don't know why these guys aren't E6s already.
Right.
Like they were all over everything. They were squared away. I was still pretty irritated, I guess, like getting sent to Black Knight, especially the whole thing was, I didn't know anybody. I don't know these guys from anything. Yeah. And then I go to ALC, basically come back, pack my shit up, and then I'm on a plane, with you guys and going over to Afghanistan. So it was really weird because, it's weird when you deploy with a bunch of guys you don't know. Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to think. And part of me is like, I'm wondering what these guys were thinking, because usually it's not a good thing when something like that happens. Like, there's always a reason for it. Like, why would they get rid of me? You know what I mean? That was part of it too, because I was pretty irritated because I had been there for so long. Like, why did they just get rid of me? But it was just a series of unfortunate events in Manning that just ended up with me being the odd man out.
That's how I ended up in Red Platoon.
Yep. I mean, it turns out, I guess it was probably one of the good things.
Yeah.
Better things that happened. But at the time, I was pretty irritated. And then it just seemed like I was always because I got left when we got to Afghanistan, we got to Bostic. I had to stay at Bostic for like a week. I don't know if I forgot. There was a bunch of us stay. I think you were back with me, right? Or you already went up there?
I'm not sure. That was a blur. Once you get to Bostic and that whole transition into to cop eating, I barely remember any of that shit.
Yeah, I know I stayed back for a week, and there were a few guys that went back up with me. But I remember, God, it was like the night you guys got there, or whoever was there, like the night, either that night or the next night. That's when that B-10 took out one of the guys we were replacing.
Yeah, I was still at Bostic. I remember they smacked everybody just to get us mentally prepared to get fucked with or something. I don't know, but they were just.
Yeah, that was a real. And so at that point, that's when I started thinking, like, what the fuck are we getting into? But then, eventually I end up. I remember flying in that night, and then you can't really see. I've heard other people talk about it, but yeah, you look up, you see like a little patch of stars, and then you don't see anything else with your night vision. It was always low loom. And I do recall that next morning I walked outside and I was like, what in the fuck? Like, who the fuck thought of this bullshit? And that started our magical 12 months.
Greatest adventure.
Oh, man. Well, I will say that, I mean, I liked I liked the platoon right from the start. I liked just about everybody, but I think to a certain extent I was trying to be a little bit extra, just because I was new. I didn't want to appear like I was some shitbag or some, pushover. But at the same time, I kind of had a gentleman's agreement with Kirk and Gallego. It's like, look, I'm not gonna fuck with you guys. Just don't cause me any problems. Obviously you guys know what you're doing. Just do your jobs, and we'll all be fine.
I mean, the best E5s anybody could ever ask for, honestly.
That's exactly. I was a newly minted E6 myself. I think I'd only been a few months. I think I got picked up maybe about 6 months or so. I wasn't anything spectacular either. I think Romachet had been E6 for already deployment, if I'm not mistaken. So I was fresh, fresh as well. But yeah, there was nothing about those guys that made it seem like that they wouldn't have been able to do just fine on their own.
Yeah.
There was nothing that was required because fucking Kirk had already, I think been in Afghanistan before, so he already had more experience with that. And Gallegos was squared away.
Yeah, Kirk had been in that same area before.
Yeah, with 173rd.
That's how hard Kirk was.
So it was a big competition, amongst everybody really, but the E5s, all the NCOs was a big competition because no matter what I did, I could never shoot more 2 or 3 rounds than him faster. That guy could empty that belt faster than anybody I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like he had an auto. It was like he was a full auto or something. He'd blink and he'd be empty.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he did it.
There's a lot of alpha personalities in that platoon.
Oh yeah.
It was. And that's why I try to explain to people. That's how we gelled pretty good. You get all that pent up rage and all that pent up aggression. And if you can focus that onto a target, you're doing something right. Like the Red Platoon is like the greatest military unit I've on the planet. I don't care what anybody fucking says. It's my only experience. Yeah, I'm biased, but shit, we were doing the right thing.
No, you're absolutely right. It was perfect, and it was great. I mean, we had our few interesting characters, but there's always interesting characters. And oddly enough, the interesting characters are usually the ones that have some weird talent or some weird propensity to be good at something that you wouldn't think that they're good at. And I mean, let me think. I picked out pretty fast who I thought didn't really have it, and in some ways they proved me right. But at the other time too, it's I don't know, man. Everybody had to really put their big boy pants on pretty fast. Yeah. There wasn't. I didn't do any part of the train up with them, so I didn't know what they had gone through, previous to that. But as soon as those B-10 rounds started coming in, that first patrol we went on, looked at those stupid cameras, we got ambushed. So that's how it's on, game on.
They didn't. There was no warm up period.
No,
at all.
No, normally, yeah, you get to rip with your unit. They tell you all the good, the bad, the ugly. You kind of get to settle in a little bit, but nothing previous to that even compared. Because we got to Iraq and we did patrols and nothing happened for a long time. And then my first deployment, they'd already been in the mix of it, and there really wasn't a whole lot going on either. So for that to happen almost right away was a bit of a shocker. And then just constant contact,
low level bullshit.
Yep, every single day. And then just thought of that fucking B-10.
You remember? You remember that time in the smoke shack? You and I were just sitting there smoking and joking, and the guy opens up with that AK. I just see your face, your eyebrows go. You're like, oh shit! And we all try to jam through that door at the same time. There's 5 of us trying to get through. That guy fucking, I don't know who it was, stumbled. We just grabbed him by the belt loops and just pitch him into.
Throw him in. Yeah.
Yeah. They hit you anytime, anywhere, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, we actually got real lucky on probably a lot of occasions, because had they pinned a platoon down, like say they'd gotten us on the north face or something, and pinned one of those platoons down, and you would have had to force another one, somebody, a QRF, to come out of the cop and go up there and try to get them, under fire. Hey, there's no way it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
They could easily just picked us apart. If they at pretty much at any time, if they really wanted to. And at the time, you didn't really think about it. So I guess
well, we'll get into that. But so the tempo, pretty intense.
Always.
First couple months there.
Yeah. Well, because you're trying to get into that rhythm of week on, week off. You know, week of patrols, week of guard, week of patrols, week of guard, and the patrol thing. I mean, that first month was brutal. I mean, I guess we were in the fortunate thing being from Colorado, we were already in pretty good shape, and we were already used to the altitude, so it wasn't that bad. But we quickly found out we weren't getting anywhere anytime fast.
Yeah.
You know,
North Base High was the hardest.
Yeah.
The hardest one.
That was brutal. That was brutal. The switchbacks.
I love the switchbacks because that was the easiest one to do. I'm like, we're doing switchbacks. I'm like, thank God, you know. That was our easy patrol.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't getting anywhere anytime soon. I mean, I don't know. Those guys just must be in like Olympic level athletes, or you know, to be able to zip around. I mean, I guess I've never tried it without body armor. You know, that probably makes a big difference, you know, without carrying all that shit. But yeah, we weren't getting anywhere anytime fast. And really, I guess even though things were going on, you know, it's kind of a false sense of security. Like I felt we were good enough. You know, while we were getting into these altercations with them, I guess naively I thought that we were gonna demonstrate that, you know, don't fuck with us, because we're gonna take it to you.
Yeah, man, I felt the same way. I mean, I was just a private, and I kept myself oblivious to a lot of the heavy shit because it doesn't help you to be worrying about that stuff. It really doesn't, especially when you're lower enlisted. But yeah, on my confidence, the platoon never faltered. I enjoyed the shit out of cockteating. I liked it there. It's some of the best times of my life.
We all raced to the positions, and it was just like a race to get to the guns first. You know, obviously whoever's on guard, but you know, that 240 up there, like we'd try to get to that or any other support positions. And it was always just how many rounds can we shoot? How much fire can we lay down? So we get, you know, what does our ammo count look like when we send it in? And I thought for sure we had that, you know, well under control and well in hand. And I really just thought, yeah, that would be our deployment, just walking around and pulling guard duty, probably getting shot at and messed with every once in a while, you know, every other day or every day. I know some people, you know, was it Martin and I think it was Martin. There was one time we had to do LZ security, and there's two different instances, but one time we were out there, I think it was me and Gallegos or somebody else. We were out there actually on the pad out there by the river, and all of a sudden, like right above my head, I hear this missile, and I swear to God, I didn't shit my pants, but I about did, because I thought my life flashed before my eyes. Well, nobody had told us, but there was Apaches that had crept in and were doing terrain denial, and lit off a hellfire like right above. It seemed like it was right above our head. I think it was a little further back, but that was one of those instances where my life flashed before my eyes.
Communication wasn't one of our strong suits.
No. And there was another one. We were all out there because I think all the mechanics had to come out there to operate the Bobcat, and I think fuel bladders and different things. And somebody started shooting from the mountainside, and I think it was Sergeant Martin, took off running and tried to go into the ECP, and he missed the door and ran full on into the wall. And then did this like weird, like a weird like vertical combat roll, and then like went in the building. And I was laughing so hard I had to go in there and see who it was. It seemed comical, you know, at the time. He was so scared, but you know, I mean, he was just doing what he could to keep himself together.
Oh, the time I got blown up with a B-10 at the ECP. My first memory after that is you were like talking to my pants, like, "Hey, you okay?" I'm like, I think so.
Ears are ringing.
Oh, it wasn't even that. Like when that thing hit, like I didn't hear it. It was so close. It instantly deafened me. Bam, you know. And my vision went black and white. and it was like an old silent movie. Like it was like a frame rate. You could see it was like shutter frames. It landed. It was like an old time movie, like a puff of smoke, like a just a special effect goes up, and all those people outside were just like blood was just spraying out of their eyes and their nose and stuff. I'm just like, you know, they rung my bell like hard.
I'm pretty sure that's the one that they had actually, because I was sitting in the alternate truck. I was a sergeant of the guard, and I was sitting back there in that alternate truck. And I think Schmidt actually called over the radio incoming, like he'd seen a flash or something had happened. And so I was kind of like front row for when that one came ripping in. And I saw that thing, and so that's why I ran down there so quick. I mean, in hindsight, I guess I should have made sure they weren't going to shoot another one. But yeah, I went down there to see what the fuck was going on.
I just got up there. I got it settled in, comfy, undid my chin strap, was pulling a cigarette out of the pack to light it up. And it was just like right in front. I don't know what, usually you can hear it coming, but it just blindsided me right in front of my face.
It probably has something to do with the fact that it was coming right towards you.
Yeah.
Because I could hear it, but I was further back. So I was, you know, you were in its trajectory, so that's probably why you couldn't hear it. Which is kind of scary, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it, everything was scary. I didn't realize it because that was my first deployment. I'm like, this is just shit. This is just what it's like, you know. So
I've never experienced anything like that. That was all brand new. I mean, the thing that really, I guess, kind of like first sergeant fucking with us about our Kevlars and having, like, you know, I remember Bunker 6 fucking stopped me in the middle of a firefight. I was trying to get the keys to the ammo point, and he actually stopped me and made me unroll my sleeves before he'd give me the keys. Like stupid shit like that. I just remember that was so frustrating.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point of being on this fucking outpost is we're out of sight, out of mind, but somehow we end up with these
worse rules than Bostic.
Yeah, these old school, you know, no rolling up your sleeves, you got to make sure you shave. And then somehow, if that B-10 round lands, you having your Kevlar and your eye protection on is going to save your life. You know, you got no arms, no legs, you know, or whatever else, but hey, at least he has Kevlar on.
Remember that time we were all out there smoking, and First Sergeant comes around the corner with his nods on, looking for uniform violations, and you didn't have your chin strap on, and you would click it. Jones took the hit for you. He's like, "That was me, Sergeant." Old Jonesy.
Because I had just gotten yelled at, man. He called me in there specifically to yell at me, and I think I was doing something, and yeah, I had to go report to the first sergeant. Yeah, he ripped me a new one. And but that was the nice thing about Red Platoon, because like Ramoshay didn't give a fuck, I didn't give a fuck, and honestly, it seemed like Guerrero didn't really give a fuck. So, which was kind of shocking, because I thought he would have been like the worst one. Because the deployment before that, Sergeant Udell was a prior drill sergeant, so he was very, very, very strict about, you know, mustaches and sideburns and stupid shit like that.
Dude, my hair was not in regs one day over there. One day.
That's why I was a little surprised. You know, I was a little surprised that Guerrero didn't fuck with us more about that. But I mean, I guess in hindsight, he was probably more nervous about other stuff.
Yeah, I kind of feel, I'm not gonna leave this in, but I kind of feel bad that they did him like that. I'd rather took him over Sergeant Martin's punk ass any day of the week.
Well, so the Sergeant Martin. That's the same Sergeant Martin from the first story.
What a tool that guy is.
Yeah.
What a tool.
Yeah. Absolute. That was my first experience with 361 Cav. Yeah, no, we just couldn't catch a break after that, it seemed like.
No, never. That's the thing, it never gets any better. That's like, oh, that's a real fatalistic view of the world. I'm like, you don't understand. It never got any better until we got back. It never did.
And you can interpret that several different ways, and it's all the same. It all applies, you know, no matter how you wanted to phrase that or put that. Because at the same time, I don't know that there could have ever been a better group of dudes than we had in Red Platoon. Like, there would have been nobody else that I would have wanted to go through all that stuff with.
It was lightning in a bottle, man. It was perfect. It couldn't have happened any more perfectly than it did.
No, and I thought Bunderman was I thought he was like a fucking intel officer, commo or something. I was like, oh fuck, like this is our platoon leader. But then I was hoping that Guerrero was going to be a strong leader, and then it'd work out, and it kind of went the other way. So I was a little surprised by that. But it turned out Butterman, he was actually a really good platoon leader. I didn't have any problems with him. Well, I take that back. We had our issues on some things, but overall,
I didn't have a problem with him till long after.
Yeah, overall, he was definitely one of the better platoon leaders I'd ever had, for sure. And oddly enough, we just got along with everybody, and that was kind of a weird scenario considering everything that was going on. Because like you said, there was all those alpha personalities, so usually you run into things where you start having these little, power struggles or different kinds of insubordination, stuff like that. But no, like everything just went along perfectly.
Yeah, and I tell people that's it comes down to our NCOs, man. We're the best. I tell people they got the best NCOs of anybody in the Army. Like they kept us focused on the important stuff,
Well, really,
direct your rage toward the enemy.
Between us, the mortars, the medics. I mean, we had a good collection of solid people, just in every aspect. And even your fucking redneck ass,
redneck.
I thought you were like, I remember like you got in trouble for something there bitching because you were talking about the B-10 thing on the radio or on the phone or something. And I was like, fucking Kyle Knight. And then I had to go on patrol with you. And I'm like, why they stick me with this fucking turd? Because I didn't really know you. I didn't know anything about you. I was like, fucking idiot. And then we started talking about something, and then you were explaining it to me. And like I said, that was when that little light bulb went on. I was like, this fucking guy is way too goddamn smart. You're trying to explain the azimuth. You're trying to do like a back azimuth and use trigonometry to figure out the trajectory and like where the origination. I was like, looking at you like, what in the fuck? what kind of nerd is this fucking guy?
I was a mega nerd. Nobody even knew. Yeah, I'm a.
But then we just kept talking, and the more I got to talking to you, I was just like, this guy is just way too fucking good. That's it. That's all it comes down to. Like he's misunderstood and underappreciated. So at that moment, that's when my opinion changed.
I appreciate that.
I was like, you know what, Kyle Knight's fucking square. I like this guy. I like this guy, and I like Jones obviously from that first ambush.
Yeah.
And he's up there on his gun. Hey, I got your back, Sarge.
Yeah, I remember that we going after stupid deer cameras, and me, Kirk, and Jeff were up behind that rock. A&A was shooting at us. Taliban was shooting at us. And called danger close. I think called a danger close fire mission, like within 100 yards of our position, and of course, no mortar porter. That'd have been a career making move right there.
Yeah,
didn't shoot it.
Yeah, because I threw the red smoke grenade, so I was the furthest. I think I was the furthest forward. That was a dumbass move on my part, so I'm glad they didn't make me pay for that. But I was so pissed off because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that we were out in the woods looking for camouflage trail cameras that weren't where they were supposed to be.
Yeah, we never did find them fucking things, did we?
We went through every inch of that fucking grid square. And I don't know. I mean, I would not be surprised if they didn't take them and put them somewhere. I don't know. That's mystery.
For people who don't know, the previous unit had set up a bunch of basically off-the-shelf hunting cameras, looking for like the motion tracking deer cameras up in the trees, trying to find the Taliban, find where they were infilling from. And our first mission patrol was to go find those cameras to get the SD cards out of them. Never found them fucking things.
And for the property book.
Yeah.
Because Porter was signing for him or some shit like that.
Of course.
Yeah. That was one of those. I was just like, what the really? That's what we got to do. But I guess that kind of set the scene for that portion. And then, I mean, there was a lot of shit. I mean, just the fact that we were outside of effective gun range from Bostic. We couldn't see our outpost, and I think we were supposed to rotate up there. Maybe that would have given us a chance, but I had no real clue of where they were in relation to us. Honestly, at the time, I thought the mortar pit would have been good to go where it was located. But other than that, I mean, the fact that everything had to be choppered in, choppered out, there was no other way in or out. The trucks we had were old and decrepit. Definitely, and even if we would have had to drive them, I don't even know if we could have. You know, try to figure out the route, and not to mention driving through like the cesspool of that fucking valley.
So it's 6 a.m. October 3rd. Cop Keating, where are you at?
So I had been up. Gallegos was the sergeant of the guard before me, and as we had been doing for probably a month or so, yeah, probably about a month. So I would generally be up before my shift, or usually to stay up all night, and we would shoot the shit and play video games or whatever. And then he'd go out, I'd be playing games, and he'd go out and do his checks and come in, or I'd go out there with him. We'd just sit there and talk, and we had just got done, doing our thing. It was my turn to take over the shift, so I had made coffee, and I went to the piss tubes. And the first thing I remember seeing was the Afghan, I guess it was the police captain or whatever the fuck he was, the head of the police guy.
He owned that shop.
Yeah, he was in full gear, and everybody was kind of scrambling around. And then I got a call. I got a fucking radio call that come to the talk. So I walked into the talk, and I remember I set my coffee cup down, and I think it was holy shit, fuck's his name? Schultz. Somebody was going to tell me about. We got in a report. I think they just opened their mouth, like they were just getting ready. We just got a report that, and then all of a sudden, like the first explosions and gunfire started. And that was like the weirdest. So I immediately hauled ass, through the talk door, through the back door of the barracks. Everybody was up. Bunderman was out. I hear, a lot of yelling, and he's looking at me, and I'm listening to my radio, and it was basically just every position was calling a report. Every position was calling contact him. And he's asking me questions. I'm trying to listen. He's trying to ask me. And so long story, he's like, where's it coming from? And I just looked at him and said, everywhere. It's coming from everywhere. Everybody's engaged right now. It's coming in every point. It's RPGs, gunfire, machine gun fire, sniper fire. So shortly thereafter, now bear with me because some of this stuff, I don't know if I've just kind of forgotten or just kind of a blur. So I have to kind of work through how some of these events were. But I do remember that one very specifically. And I remember Bunderman went to the talk. And I remember, I'm pretty sure Gallegos had gone to use the shitter. So I think he was already up there. And he jumped on the machine gun. And everybody else just kind of got their shit together and started moving out. And I'm still trying to, I guess, make heads or tails of who's doing what. I think we started running ammo, pretty soon. Thereafter, started running low on ammo pretty soon. And so we're trying to coordinate with Blue Platoon to get resupply. I'm trying to figure out, the long story short of it is trying to figure out who needs what, who's bringing. It was a big giant clusterfuck, I guess is a good way to put it, because everybody's trying to figure out who needs what and who's bringing it to them, and trying to keep track of all that. And really, the next thing I remember is going to the ECP with you, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been Corville came and got me.
Yeah, you were already there. I went to look for a stretcher. I got to the aid station, couldn't find one. When I came back, you and Corville were there getting him on the stretcher already.
I think it was Corville, and because Kirk was down.
Yeah, I don't remember. We must have crossed paths, but I do not remember it.
Everybody was just hauling ass everywhere you want. Keep your head down. I mean, shit it's just like a fucking movie. It's like I said, some of that shit was a blur. I don't remember getting there. I just remember I looked down, and there's Kirk on a stretcher, and he's looking up. And I didn't really, understand what his injuries were at the time because he was, on his back, so he couldn't see anything. I couldn't really tell anything. And then I remember it was you, me, Corville, and I think somebody else was on the stretcher, and we were trying to get him out. And I remember us losing because that fucking stretcher was soaked with blood. And that was the other thing too, is I didn't remember seeing it. I didn't remember seeing any blood, but it was. And we ended up losing our grip on it, and that's when he kind of rolled off a little bit, and then that bandage kind of fell from the back of his head.
I got stuck on that Bobcat wheel.
Yes, Bobcat wheel. And that was really one of those, like, I'll never forget it to this day. I mean, I can see his face staring at me. Like, he's looking right at me. His eyes are open, wide open, and he's looking right at me. Yeah. And we just fucking boot and rallied. And then I know you said that I grabbed the stretcher by myself. I don't remember doing that, but I might have, just to keep it going.
You were on the heading in. You were on the right side. I was on the left, at the front of the stretcher. I climbed over the first tire and got stuck between the tires. And I'm like, whoa, slow up. And you just kept going, and you pulled it out of my hand. And I don't know how you knew or whatever, but you did like a spin thing and grabbed the other handle before he could go. And you kept taking off. And I just sat there between the wheels, just watching.
Yeah. Cause this was Kirk, man. Like, I had to get him. It was one of those things where I didn't think about what I was doing. I just knew where he needed to go. And we got him to the aid station. Got him up on the table, and within a matter of, it couldn't have been a very long span of time. I remember I looked at Cordova, and he shook his head, no. And I just remember, like, at that moment in time, like, I don't know, like, feeling just, I never felt anything like that before. Like, it was just like the most horrific. That was like, at that moment, it was the most horrific thing. It took me out for a minute or two, at least. I don't know what the duration was, but I had to get my shit back together. Like, I was kind of out of it for a sec because I was just trying to process what had just happened.
I'm right there with you. Because after he first got hit, I was one of the first guys on the scene. And I just remember looking there, he was just choking on his own blood. And I guess the round hit right under his cheekbone, went through his face and back out the back. I don't know. It missed his spinal column and just blew the back of his head off. I just remember him just like blood pouring out of every hole in his face, just choking and just staring at me.
And the crazy thing about that is I don't remember anything except for his eyes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, I'll never forget.
Somehow I don't remember, other than I remember there being the blood on the bandage and stuff, but he looked exactly like, in my brain, he looked exactly the same. His eyes were open. Yeah, that was insane. And then somehow, so after that, Senator Copes was on, God, I don't know, was it fucking LRAS?
LRAS 1?
1, yeah. And he was going through ammo. So somehow we had ended up scrounging, because we had kept some Mark 19 ammo. Because remember, we set up that extra Mark 19 to shoot at the B96 position. So I remember at some point, me and Fox hauled ass over there and got that can and brought that to Copes. And somewhere in there, all the guns were down. And I remember I told Copes he was the only one left, because he was trying to ask me questions about what was going on. And I was like, you're the only one left, dude. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, you're it. You do what you got to do. I'll bring you ammo. I'll bring you batteries. I'll bring you food, whatever. But keep doing what you're doing. And his face was just like,
shit.
Yeah, he was like, he was getting shot at sniper fire, and somewhere in there, all the Jones and all that shit was going on, and I didn't even know about this fucking sniper fire, but I mean, shit, there, we're trying to keep him because he was the only cruiser we had at that particular moment in time. I had scrounged every bit of belt-fed ammo that I could, all the magazines, because we had all that stockpile of shit in the barracks. We had stuff, just random places. I had accumulated everything. I think I'd set up. Yeah, was that when you guys were at the door?
Yeah, I had that 240 there. Remember, Hart?
Yeah.
Wanted to go out there and get that truck moving. You're like, I can't tell you to do that. Remember, he tried to take Davidson with him, and you're like, you're not fucking taking Dave out there.
That was one of those, when Hart did that, it was one of those times where in a split second, you're trying to make a decision. Like, that's kind of the fucked up thing, I guess, sometimes about being in leadership, especially a situation like that, is you got a split second to make a decision. And you got to try to rationalize what the probability of success is and what it could do versus what happens if you don't do it. You know, because I'm thinking if we don't do that, all those guys are dead. If we do it, those guys could still all be dead and Hart might be dead. And unfortunately, that's the way that went.
I don't see anybody talking him out of that, though.
No, probably not. I don't know. I mean, Roche had already told him no, so he hadn't just went and done it. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, it was a solid plan. It really was. The execution, you know, not so much, but can't take anything away from him because you know, that guy didn't do half steps on shit like that. So I'm sure he gave it his best effort. Yeah. And it just didn't go his way. I mean, part of it is these trucks were just piles of shit. That outpost wasn't made for what we were trying to do. And it comes down to it. And honestly, as a driver, you can't really see what, you know, you can't see that much. They got a lot of blind spots. The turtle shell one, you can't see behind you unless you can see the mirrors, which who knows if those were even adjusted. I mean, that thing was sitting there for so long.
We would sit there and fuck with them on guard. Just
yeah, because it wasn't made to drive anywhere. All it was is a place to put a gun. That's all it was there for. So yeah, in hindsight, you know, maybe I wish I would have told him no. You know, don't do it. But hindsight's 20/20, as they always say. But I remember Scusa. I didn't see Scusa's body, but I remember seeing the blood. That was one of the times when we were going to resupply Copes. I saw the spot where he had been shot, and somehow I ended up carrying Griffin, and that was one of the freakiest because they had brought him to the ECP as well. And I remember I tried to, so I was there by myself because everybody else was off trying to do whatever their job was. So I tried to fireman carry him. So I was going to use his, you know, lock his legs and then get him over my shoulder. But when I went to lock his legs, one of his legs was broken. And his femur was broken. So the whole leg just collapsed. And so I had to like wrestle this, you know, lifeless body up there. And that was one of those, that's another one I won't forget. That was the weirdest time. And then by that time, I think there was already 2 or 3 bodies laid out on that little deck there by the aid station. And that was that time when I was just like, you know, I thought we were fucked.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I thought we were to a man. I thought we were done for, because I think at some point I went in there and talked to Bunderman, you know, trying to find out where Air Sport was. Oh, they're 30 minutes out. They're 30 minutes out. You know, you got to keep fighting. It's like, I don't think you understand what's going on here. Like, we're trying to resupply. They're getting shot left and right. They're out of ammo. We can't drive to where they are. There's nothing we can, you know, we're just kind of fucked in place here. Like everybody's on, and I didn't know about the mortar platoon at that time because they weren't on our net. I remember running into Romache here and there, and he was telling me what he's doing, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm gonna do this, and yeah, that was just part of that was just a big blur of bullets and explosions and people.
Yeah, a lot of people doing their own thing because there really was no chain of command. Everything kind of broke down. Everybody was just like, you're either volunteering for stuff or trying to figure out what you can do.
And honestly, it's because we were the guard platoon at that time. So as soon as Kirk went down, that kind of, you know, that coordinated, you know, we weren't operating like we normally would. We're operating in a way that we had never operated before. We weren't operating as teams, we weren't operating as sections, we weren't operating in any sort of semblance of actual tactical soldiering. I think everybody's just every man for themselves, you know, trying to do one task. You know, each person's trying to do one task, but they have no support. There's no way you could, because every time I looked around, you'd see somebody shooting somewhere. Or I remember we were there and the funny thing was, we were there at the barracks at that front door trying to set up that little position there. And I remember there was an explosion, and I didn't notice until I think after all this was over and done with. But there was about a 4-inch hole up in the corner, probably about 2 feet from where like our heads would have been. And it blew through the outer door, it blew through the wall, through the stone wall, and through like the 3 or 4 partitions. I don't know where the round actually ended up going, the penetrator or whatever it was, but it blew a hole right through our barracks, and I don't remember it even taking place.
I don't.
I remember the explosion, but I didn't even register that had even happened. Like we were probably 2 feet away from getting ourselves blown away. And then at some point there was when that fucking Taliban guy popped his head around the corner there by the shop, and I was just shocked. Like the split second it took me to realize who he was and what he was, and for me to get my weapon up, he'd already popped back around the corner, and I lobbed a shot at 203 about 30 feet, hoping to take him out.
When in doubt, grenade.
Yeah, which in hindsight was pretty fucking stupid, but I figured, if he was there, none of our guys could have been there because they wouldn't have let him get by, at that point. But that was pretty fucking dumb, and the ammo point was right there. So yeah, in hindsight, that was about the dumbest fucking thing could have done. But yeah, nothing happened. But I don't think we got him either. But that was another one of those weird moments. But then all of a sudden, I think Ricochet came up with this plan, and that's when everything started changing. Because instead of going from this just chaotic here, there, everywhere, we actually sort of organized and came up with a strategy of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And we all knew where we were and what we were doing. And I'm just really happy that Copes is a fucking hard ass motherfucker, because he stayed on that gun for like 13 hours, something like that.
18 almost. They didn't get relieved until the sun went down, I don't think.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of time, and he kept going. He kept shooting. He kept going. He didn't quit. We were using him for indirect fire.
Yeah, you saved his life when you moved that truck. Because like he says it, the way he says it, like 2 minutes after you moved that truck, B-10 landed right where he was saving. He would have been souped.
Well, he told me that. So there was actually, I think it actually had already hit. The part of the roof exploded, like not that far from him. And I remember him saying, I think a B-10 round came in. I was like, no, I wasn't a B-10 round. I wasn't. I was like, oh, fuck. Like, that was a B-10 round. So I wasn't even sure if that truck was going to move.
For people who don't know, LRAS 1 was right in because they would aim the B-10 at that big tree, and that was right in line with LRAS 1. LRAS 1 picked up it was right in line for every B-10 they fired in. There's not a place to be.
And his face was, so that turret was right about roof height.
Yeah.
Where that opening of that turret, I mean, it was a little bit above him, but not a ton. Like he could look up, because he had to look up over that roof to engage those targets. So the height difference wasn't that much. So it wasn't that far from him. And yeah, we got that truck going and we got it moved. I didn't want to move it too far forward because I didn't want to block that lane there, in case we had to move out. So I just pulled it far enough forward where I thought it might be able to get it out of that pathway, maybe not take a direct hit. But who knows? I think Jacobs got hit somewhere in that zone too, when he took that shrapnel to his face.
I was actually on stand 2 truck 1 when he got hit. I saw that. I lost the SD card, or it got erased, but I recorded that round coming in and hitting the ECP. He was walking into the top, and it hit the roof next to him and strapped into his face.
Got him in the face. Yeah, so that whole zone was still just it was a crapshoot, but obviously it worked. So no, Copes just remaining, I guess, sane, or maybe it wasn't sanity, maybe it was out insanity. I don't know whatever it took for him to do that, for him being able to do that. That's part of it. That's what helped us. Getting organized and actually having a plan and assigning people and just having Ricochet take control. That was a big one. Getting the ammo point back was a big one. Feeding grenades to everybody, and then we broke out the laws. We broke out just about everything we could.
Yeah.
I think, part of it too was just the fact that we survived that long. That enabled us, because I think by that point they must have shot their wad.
Yeah.
They're kind of running out of.
It kind of petered off after Ricochet pushed out. Like you could feel it in the air. You could feel the momentum shift.
Yep.
And it started sounding like more outgoing than incoming, and that was a
absolutely
great fucking.
Yeah, and in hindsight, part of the way that we operated is actually part of the thing that kind of took us down. If we hadn't been so aggressive and so ready to take the fight to them, we just kind of chilled out a little bit and let it develop. Maybe things would have went different, but I guess at this point, who knows, right?
It's tough call.
But yeah, then taking back the outpost. I mean, I remember Ricochet asking if I could go with him, and I said, "Yeah, give me a minute because I need to go check on Copes and see where he's at with his ammo. I think we had to give him some more ammo before we could go do that." But yeah, that was me, and actually Larson, because I forgot about that little tidbit. Somewhere in that, the happy moment of Larson and fucking Ty Carter, but they were carrying the stretcher with Mace on it, and that was one of those like, wow, like holy fuck, I can't believe you guys are alive. I remember like looking at them like kind of in disbelief, and then the stretcher went in there, and Mace was talking, and they started asking for volunteers to donate blood because I think A positive. So fortunately, a bunch of us were too. I know I gave some. A bunch of us gave blood for that. And Mace wanted a cigarette. And that was, I didn't want to give him a cigarette because I didn't know, what that was going to do to him. But at that time, that was probably one of the happier, seeing that, knowing that those guys were still alive. Didn't really know. I guess at that point is when I figured out that Gallegos hadn't made it, but I hadn't seen him yet. So that one really didn't sink in, like he did with Kirk. But then part of that taking back the outpost was going up there and finding everybody. So we went out there and yeah, you said that everything was different because if anybody would have been left with any kind of ammunition or any good vantage point, they would have just taken us out probably right then and there. We were trying to be tactical and moving our way around, trying to use our cover and concealment as best as we could, considering everything was way higher elevation than us. But we got up there and we got Gallegos, found Sergeant Martin, and we hadn't found Hart, but we got those guys back and kind of just confirmed that we had retained control of our outpost. So that was, I don't want to say a breathe easier moment, but it was definitely one of those times where, like you said, you could feel that shift and the momentum, and there was actually some hope that we're going to make it out.
Do you remember it? Do you remember it raining? Not a lot of people remember.
I do not.
It started. We had a little rain shower there about early afternoon. It started raining. I remember I got real cold because I was just in my t-shirt, and I had AV Grow grab my ACU top to throw on. We got we got dunked on.
Is that when you were in your trench?
Yeah, before I pushed out with harder.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You remember you came around the corner one time when I was out there shooting the machine gun? You're like, "Hey man, where's your battle buddy?" And there was those 4 A&A guys who were just hiding in the trench. I'm like, "I guess these guys." You're like, "Wrong answer." And you sent Davidson out there.
Well, I know my opinion on a lot of things changed. Like Davidson, I had felt that he was probably ill-suited to be a scout because everything he did before then, I thought he was just like one of the worst soldiers. But
I tried to get the ECP turret back up, and it was black on ammo because he fired every fucking round.
Yeah, absolutely. And come to find, he was one of those guys that I underestimated. He made some bad decisions before that. He was the one that was trying to hammer the live 7.62 round to get the pin out. That was me and Kirk were sitting there watching him do that, and that was one of those NCO moments where it's like, do we let this happen or do we stop it? And that was one of those times where I thought Davidson was a total fucking retard. But yeah, come to find out, no. When it came down to it, he did his job, and he did a great job. Everybody did. Okay, geek.
Oh,
Okay,
man. Well, I just remember you hurling him bodily across the barracks that one time.
yeah, that was not one of my finer moments, but
I was amused.
yeah, well, apparently everybody else knew that I was bipolar except for me.
Well, that's the thing, man. You were the nicest guy most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you were just you were one of the NCOs you could approach, but like, he better have his boom boom and his fucking Snickers bar before you even bring anything up.
That's so embarrassing, you know, to hear that out loud, but because it makes me seem like psychotic.
No,
But
you were exactly what we needed. But you know, yeah, you were the guy. Like, you were the guy you wanted to hang out with, but at the same time, you didn't want to piss you off. Like I remember, like some of my fondest memories of you was like the whole lower enlisted in the barracks at Boston. We'd all be rumbling, and you'd come through the door like, "What's happening?" And then you see all the fight, and you're just like, you rub your knuckles, like, "Here we go." Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, I was never part of that. I think my first platoons, like my first platoon that I was in, there was a very big divide between the NCOs and the Joes, to the point where the only time we spoke was when either we're on patrol or you were in trouble. Like, I didn't even know these guys hardly at all. Like, my platoon sergeant said maybe 2 fucking words to me the whole time. My section sergeant didn't say shit. I never liked that. You know, like, we're out here, we're all doing the same thing. We're all, I mean, yes, we all have different jobs, we have different ranks and stuff, but to a certain extent, if I'm going to be, you know, with these guys to my left and right, I want to know who they are. I want them to know who I am. I want to know kind of what they're made of. I want to know about them. You know, I want to know, you know, where you come from. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know about your parents. I want to know about your dog, or, you know, whatever. I want to know things about you. So that was my first couple of platoons. My first interactions, really, that's what shaped me to I guess, you know, I still want to be part of the platoon. I didn't want there to be that big separation, because that always just seems so strange. Like, how do you,
As a lower enlisted guy, we really appreciated that.
yeah, I mean, there's the whole thing about respecting rank and stuff, which that used to drive me fucking nuts, which I understand. You know, everybody has to have their position in the hierarchy, but at the same time, sometimes it's better to respect the person.
Oh,
you know, and even if somebody's lower ranking than me, it doesn't mean I can't respect them. It doesn't mean I can't, you know, as long as everybody knows where the, you know, business is business and fun is fun, which we never had a problem with that. Well, not never, but most of the time we never had a problem with that. But that's when the heavy-handed would come in.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, that throwing Davidson across the room. That's when we were trying to watch a movie.
Well,
and
Kirk asked him
ask
3
himself.
fucking times. That's the thing. Now, Kirk doesn't ask nicely for things like that. Kirk was being nice and asked him 3 fucking times. And you're like, Kirk tells you to fucking move. You fucking move.
So we were in the dark, right? We're sitting in that was the thing, is it defied logic. We're sitting in the dark trying to watch a movie, and he's trying to do a fucking crossword puzzle. Like, take your ass over to the light. You know, we're over here trying, and it was all comes down to the chair.
I'm comfortable where I am, Sergeant. I'm comfortable where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? Then I watched him tune up fucking Gregory, and I'm like, you know, that little fucker, he might have been scrappier than I thought I would have given him credit for.
Greg gets a bad rap, but he's a good guy.
Yeah, I didn't really care about him one way or the other, because that was the other thing too, is we had our section rivalry. You know, nobody really talked about that, but you know, in Bravo, we always thought we're the best.
Yeah.
Fuckers in Alpha, you know, in Romaché's section, fucking douchebags, you know.
Well, we had the best fucking guys. Jones, fucking Kirk, Gallegos. We were some heavy hitters, man.
Yeah, we did, and we got shit done, and we fucking executed, and we all thought very similarly, I think, for the most part. And then the fact that, you know, we're all, you know, I made the mistake of asking Gallegos if we wanted to work out when we got to Afghanistan, not knowing he was a fucking monster. And I think he gained like 40 pounds of muscle in like the first week or something. Like all of a sudden he's bench pressing like everything we had. Like we ran out of weight. He didn't have enough weight anymore. He was trying to do reps.
Him and Kirk forced me to go to the gym one time, and they're like, "Oh, this is where we find heavy things to lift and push." And
yes.
and like him and Kirk are just taking 100-pound dumbbells and doing Arnold presses and stuff, and I'm just like, what am I even doing here? Why bother? Why even bother? This is the most demotivating thing I've ever done in my life.
I still have pictures of that. I've got pictures of us in the gym getting after it. Yeah, but you know what? That helps. That helped us because that helped us kind of get on that same page, and that's why our section worked so well. I think for the most part because we were all in that. Started getting in the like mind, and I started to figure out. You know, I took some of the things that they said too because like Kirk had been there before, so he had a lot of good insight, and just the fact that he was the most. I don't know how to describe it. Like he hated those people with every ounce of his being to the point where like if he was naked, like I feel like if he was like in the shower or something and it would have went off, you would have seen him with his fucking body armor, like butt ass naked, running around like he would have been that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't have given a shit. Like he hated them with every ounce of his being. Yeah. And Gallegos, I think he was a little more laid back, but he was not fond of him either. But that guy, he used to carry thousands of rounds of ammo.
Yeah.
On top of, everything else. These guys were they were a different breed, like you were talking about before. And then Mace, trying to keep up with them. He's doing his leg day, but he's come back and his arms are all like swollen up.
Well, that's the thing. That the one day I went to the gym, they like, okay, work out with Mace, and he's like, I'm doing legs, and I smashed him on the leg press. I smashed him, and he was like so pissed off. He's like, "Fuck you!" I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What do you like? I ain't got chicken legs, Mace. What you want from me?
Well, he's always working on his biceps.
Yeah, his beach muscles.
Yeah, his beach muscles. But yeah, so going back to that day, and then I remember when all the people started showing up, and then we started getting the air support, and they were just dropping bombs, and that was a moment where I knew that all right, we made it through I guess this was after fucking Carter's, valorous chainsawing of the tree across the roofs, just to make sure that just in case they didn't burn the whole cop down, we want to make sure we can help them do that.
Medal of Honor, greatest soldier to ever live.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Yeah, and then started getting that air support coming. I remember I was talking to whatever the JTAC that was there that showed up, and he was explaining, the eight layers of aircraft that we had overhead.
Yeah, Adam Burns, he's been on the show.
Yeah. No, has he?
Mm-hmm.
That guy was fucking badass. But I mean, just when you think about, military might there for a second, you got 8 layers, to include B-1 bombers and, AC-130s and A-10 Warthogs and all the other assorted shit they can stir up.
From what I heard, every available aircraft in RC East was in our AO.
Yeah.
Just drop.
Yeah. And then you remember when that B-1 went Winchester on the fucking village?
It was like boom, 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 and then like the big cloud goes up, and you're just like, holy fuck, what, they drop a nuke?
It lifted the building off the foundation. We were in the Shure building when that happened. It lifted. I don't know if it actually did or not, but I thought for sure it did. Like that was the craziest thing I'd ever experienced.
Yeah.
But then we started to get our confidence back. I mean, some people, I don't know, some people probably never lost it, but definitely I had lost a little bit. I was kind of starting to feel like I'm not really sure what direction to go here. And then we started to get reorganized, and things started to happen, and the bombs started dropping, and you hear the gun runs coming in. And that was when, we're taking it back. And then 10th Mountain shows up with their one platoon of, 120 guys. And they humped a fucking LRAS down the mountain.
Why the hell they brought that? We got plenty of LRASs where we were at. What do you need that piece of shit for? That thing never did anything for anybody.
No, but they brought the kitchen fucking sink, man. They brought everything to
That's
include
probably
Kubler.
Probably why it took them 8 hours to get down the goddamn mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm sure they were loaded. I mean, they had ammo, they had anything you could ever think of. They came ready to fucking party. But that was kind of that moment where I'm like, you know, there is an obvious difference here between the way these guys do business and the way we do business. Because, you know, 2 platoons plus some headquarters, we had total, what, 50 something guys?
Yeah.
And that's 1 platoon, and they were 100, 100 strong.
Why they didn't put an infantry company in that valley to begin with?
You kind of wonder, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was the thought behind that?
Nobody was thinking.
No. Well, the thing with that is, I mean, if you go successfully year after year after year, I mean, if it had just been the same, a little bit here and there, a couple guys got injured or whatever, that's like standard business for most of those places. The exception, I think, what Barialai had gotten overrun a few years before that. Wanat had gotten overrun. So it did happen sporadically. But for the most part, it was just normal business as usual. I guess, you get shot at sometimes, they'd lob some shit at you. And that's kind of what I thought was going to happen up until they closed the outpost. Shit, I forgot all about that. Yeah, they were going to close the outpost. And I was just like, God, it's going to be such a shit show.
They promised us 18 turns of shit hooks to get everything out.
Yeah, and somehow we had to salvage every pile of shit out of that. We had to get the trucks out. We had to get the Bobcat out. Every fucking thing was leaving that place. Yeah, we couldn't get mail. Yeah. We couldn't get laundry and mail, but we can get helicopters to get stuff out of there.
That was Bo Bergdahl and Boris Vittal that fucked all that up.
Yeah, well, fuck Bo Bergdahl.
Fuck Bo Bergdahl.
Fucking douche. Yeah. Thanks, Bo.
Yeah.
Fucking cocksucker. Well, Boris Vittal, there's nothing you can do about that. Shit happens when you party naked. I guess that's what they say. It never gets any better, right? That was the platoon motto, and that definitely stuck with it.
It never did. So it's the end of the day. We get our sleep in. Next morning, October 4th. What are we doing?
That was a weird day, because on one hand, I mean, you're just relieved to be alive, and looking at everybody who survived, and you're thinking, I'm happy, I'm thankful that everybody's there, and then you start thinking about the guys that didn't make it. And I remember gathering some dog tags, trying to get their stuff together, because I want to make sure that, especially because Gallegos, we had spent some time talking and getting to know each other. And that's what he was telling me about his son and about Amanda, and talking about plans of, maybe getting back together when he got back. And I think at that time, it was kind of important to me that I could try to get some of his personal stuff, just to make sure that I get that together. I hung on to, I don't know if you remember that paracord bracelet that he had with his dog tag on it. So I actually kept that, and I wore that for the rest of the deployment. And then when I got back to Carson, we had all the big meet and greet, I met up with Amanda and made sure I gave that to her. But yeah, Gallegos and just everybody just getting all their personal stuff together. That was kind of what my thought was, making sure that none of that walked off. Yeah, we're packing up. It was unreal. It was really just unreal. Like I couldn't really get my thoughts together. We had no means of communication with anybody, so we're just kind of in this bubble. And I guess part of me in the back of my mind was, is there going to be a round 2?
Did you go out on that patrol and do removal that day with us?
So I did not. I ended up, for some reason, down at the gate doing some type of overwatch or something. I don't remember exactly what was going on or why that happened. But we were down there. There was a group of guys about 300 or 400 feet down the river, and there's about 4 or 5 guys posted up down the tree line. down there. So me and a couple other guys were down there kind of keeping an eye on it to see what was going to happen because everybody else was going up. I think you guys went to switchbacks, right?
Yeah, we did. Like you go up halfway up the switchbacks and you cut over that side
Yeah.
road.
So I don't know, in hindsight, that was pretty dumb again. But yeah, we were down there right by the main gate, keeping an eye on that group of guys down there because somebody had seen them. So we were just kind of trying to see what was going to happen or see what they might be up to. Because again, I mean, we had, I know we had the captain was back, Captain Portis was back, but so everything was kind of back on notice. You know, we couldn't really just kind of do whatever we wanted. So, I mean, I really wanted to just take those motherfuckers out, but we already knew they were there. So somehow we got assigned to keep an eye on them while you guys did your patrol, and then came back and I heard about all the bodies that were stacked up. But we really didn't get to see shit. Just a lot of remnants, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that was the closest I ever came to like shooting a civilian. I remember we were up, me and Jones, like of course, before two truck happened, me and Jones were up there all by ourselves. They're just like overwatch our position. And I remember the civilians coming out of their buildings, and I just had them in my sights, just like I took the slack out of my trigger, and my hands were just freaking shaking. I wanted to smoke those guys so bad.
Yeah, but you know, you don't know who they are and shit. There's no way to know. They could have been the ones shooting at us the day before. You don't, like what do you do? It reminds me. So back in my my first deployment, there was a thing called the Mad Minute, and when that Bradley got hit, every vehicle that was there shot for about a minute straight in 360 degrees. Everything they had was 25. Everything was going. That was back when the rules of engagement were a little more lax. And then the second deployment, that's when that started to go away. I mean, it was gone at that point. I was talking about that with the platoon leader, platoon sergeant at that time, and they were looking at me like I was some kind of fucking savage or something. Like, you can't do that. You know, rules of engagement, you can't just kill people. You can't just shoot stuff. And never did I want a Mad Minute more than I did at Keating, man. Because I mean, we got it in a way. You know, we definitely got it. But that was almost like full circle. Like that should have been, guns free at that point. But still, we weren't guns free. So yeah, the next day was a little apprehension of, you guys were off doing your patrol. Even though we had 100 extra guys there, would they have the balls to come at us again? Would they regroup and come at us again? And obviously, no, they didn't. I guess we'd killed a lot of them before that, so they probably thought better of it.
We took sporadic little bullshit here and there, but
yeah, nothing to the extent.
We broke them pretty hard.
Well, part of me kind of wanted them to, because that way, we had all 100 guys, and I mean, they had brought their own mortar systems, they had their own guns, they had more ammo than anything else. That would have been kind of nice, You probably had enough guys who might have been able to actually maneuver and fucking do something. But man, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, and then Green Berets and the Afghan Commandos went up in their Cavendish. They had all the fun.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they sent us up there to do that. Now, the hindsight, at the time, no. I kind of just want to go to Bostic and relax. But looking back, I wish we could have done a little more afterwards.
Well, the thing about, going back to Bostic, it's like, they gave us a little bit of time to regroup, but then it's just like, it was such a weird, like, how do you come back from, like, what? That was one of those crazy things, and I've recently just watching Band of Brothers, and watching some of that shit that those guys went through, and they were living that all the time, and they never skipped a beat. And then somehow, I was not prepared by any stretch of the imagination. And so going back to Bostic, it was just like a whole new thing. It was kind of like a reset in a weird way. But I think the rest of that deployment, I always kind of wondered, like, when was the next time that was going to happen? Like, would they try to overrun Bostic?
Right. Well, our last two raw, O.P. Jameson. You want to talk about O.P. Jameson?
Oh boy. That was a genius idea. It really was. That was a genius idea. And the thing that made it really genius was that, you know, they talk about doctrine. That was the thing that really, I mean, this is after the fact, but yeah, I mean, that helicopter us into an Overwatch position to Overwatch Cold Blood, to go to a village that they've never been into. So I'm already thinking, like, you know, this is probably not going to go well. Then they made us take the fucking tow missile.
Yeah, that kills me to this day. You could have took 450 kills the same way when we could have been just, I don't know, dumb. What was it? I don't understand what possessed them to bring that piece of shit.
Well, because I mean, the whole point of that is the only way that works for us. We were light right at that point, so we've got to be light. We've got to be light fighters. That's the whole thing about it. You're up there on a mountainside. We don't have the ability to really move this thing, so you essentially then lock us into this position. We don't have the ability to freedom to maneuver. We don't have, like, it's foreign to everything that being a scout is. We're not supposed to be decisively engaged. We're not supposed to be tied down to one location. Freedom of maneuver is one of the fundamentals, right? So as soon as you make us do that, it just takes it all right out the window. And really, a tow missile is what was the point of that? Like you said, we could have brought, I mean, between all the Mark 19, the Mark 48s, the small, we call them saws that we had. I mean, the Barrett fucking 50 cal sniper rifle that we had. Yeah. I mean, we had enough firepower, really, I guess, to do what we needed to do, but in that particular instance, our two greatest assets would have been you and Avalos. If anything would have went wrong, anything would have went sideways, that should have been the priority. Like, our focus should have been security for you guys while you walked, you know, artillery in on it.
And you remember where me, Greg, and Stockton were at up the hill there. Yeah. And then the minute we come down, that's where the ambush is from. They were all around us up there.
Yeah.
That was sketch as fuck.
Yeah. And they'd been there obviously for quite some time.
Oh yeah. Greg was freaking out the whole time up there. I see him. We're just like, calm down, man. Calm down.
Yeah. Well, the moment where I knew that was going sideways, I mean, I didn't even know anything was going on. We were exfilling in fucking broad daylight, which was not the plan either. And I had made it all the way to the helicopter. Like, I was probably 5 feet from the Chinook on the back deck. I was supposed to get the head count. All of a sudden, the Chinook takes off, like, starts going away. So I'm right there in the prop wash. I can't hear anything. I turn around and I see everybody on their stomachs. And then as it's flying away, I can hear the gunfire. So of course, oh shit, you know, what the fuck's going on? So I come running back there, dive in there on the line, and I look over and I see Jones pop his head up, and I hear this crack, and a bullet hit the rock right next to his face. And Jones' eyes are about, you know, $half size. He's looking at me, and I'm looking at him like, get the fuck down, man. Like, what are you doing? And I had no, you know, I didn't have any idea, because up until that point, everything was fine, you know, and I can't hear anything with the helicopter. And next thing I know, we're pinned down, and oh my God. And what's his face gets shot in the fucking ass. Oh my God. Johnson.
Oh, sorry guys, I'm good.
So that's right in front of my face. Cuddy pulls his pants down, and his fucking shot up ass cheek is about 5 feet in front of my face. Not even now, like 3 feet in front of my face. There's a big old gaping wound in the side of Johnson's ass in front of my fucking face. And honestly, at that moment, I went, oh, fuck. Here we go again.
Here we go again.
Except now it's just us.
Yeah.
And now we are well and truly fucked. You know, like, and I remember, like, I think Avalos called in a fire mission, and that round landed like, what, 20 feet in front of us?
The Uzi round?
Yeah.
120 millimeter mortar going off 100 yards in front of your face, like boom, out of nowhere.
Yeah. So it's bad enough that they got us pinned down, and then that shit's going on. And not only that, but, you know, Cold Blood's area wasn't that far. Like, if it wasn't for that fucking tow missile, we could have just picked up and fucking slid down the backside. You know, we could have had Cold Blood come up and meet us, but we had that goddamn tow, and there's no way. There's no fucking way we were gonna make any good time or have any type of stealth or anything. I mean, not that that would have mattered anyway, but there's no way we could have just hauled ass. You know, we could have done any sorts of maneuver to get out of there, but with that they wouldn't let us leave the tow missile system.
Yeah.
So there we were, stuck. There was a couple of those. I mean, even before then, the Zanger Bochet draw. Was that Tyler Parton got shot there, killed? They had been pinned down, and just Sergeant Russ, I think his name was, or he had gotten. They were using him for like target practice. They were shooting him in the legs and shooting him in the arms, and then they want us to secure that position, and then the sunlight comes up and we're still there, and everywhere you look is up. So there was a few of those that were just a little bit mind bending.
How long were we out there just laying on the ground? For like 2 or 3 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We go in there at night, you lay down, and you can't stand up or you'll get shot. So you just lay there.
There was absolutely no cover whatsoever. No cover, no concealment, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then you're, I guess, counting on the fact that they don't have night vision. Yeah. Which, imagine that.
You can see the cliff in the distance just getting fucked up, and it just gets closer and closer. You're just laying there on the ground.
Yeah.
For it to get to you.
Yeah. Now, OP Jameson, that was another fun one. But it was just one of those where, like, who the fuck thought that was a good idea? It wasn't a bad idea until you included the tow missile, honestly. That's kind of what fucked that up. I mean, us getting shot at and pinned down, we could have reacted to that. We could have moved. And Johnson getting shot in the ass. This is Johnson, so I mean that's cool. There's more infantry where he came from. Just kidding, Kent. Love you, buddy.
Well, you're gonna see him here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, well, hopefully, because he was talking about he had to leave or something. But then there was a couple more of those where there's just weird. There was that patrol like at the very end where you guys, I was going on leave, so I didn't have to go, but you guys had to hike into some valley like 5 miles, try to capture. Yes, try to capture some high value target.
Like normally I just drive on those patrols, so I didn't have my full kit, but I had my radio, I had my full kit. I drove to Checkpoint Lions Den, dismounted, they guarded the trucks, and then foot patrol like 12 miles off the mountain, and then we got back to the bottom like, oh, the high value target's back in town, turn around and go back. We were all black on water, and at that point it was just like, what the hell are we doing?
Well, fortunately Captain Portis did the right thing and said no, because guess what, he would have just left again. But I don't know, I mean, the rest of that was a pretty rough deployment, honestly. After Keating, after October 3rd, my mindset changed pretty dramatically. It was real hard to, I come to terms with the fact that no matter where we were never high enough. We were never secure enough. We never had the ability, no matter what, we could be pinned down in a matter of an instant. And I wasn't honestly sure that we were going to get the support we needed. So there's a lot of times where, I really had to think, long and hard and try to keep my head together, to make sure that I could try to, always think of what we spent a lot of time thinking of exit strategy. Like if this goes off and we get pinned down, where are we going to go? All right, we're going to go down here. We're going to go down the river. We're going to do this, and the trucks are going to come and meet us. That's why I always made sure to keep contact with the 2 truck. Hey Jones, you can see me?
Yeah. All
right. Yeah. SEALs don't fall asleep. Just in case.
If Jones can see you, you're good.
That was my thought, but the reality was, you're always thinking of, if something goes sideways, how are we getting out of this place? Because really standing and going toe to toe with these guys didn't really seem to be working out too well for us. Just because they were untouchable. No matter what we did, it seemed like we never, even going back to Keating, like we used to do all those fire missions and lob all those rounds. And I don't know if you remember doing those dismounted patrols, and you'd find all those little nooks and crannies and little caves and stuff where they'd hide out. Like we weren't touching them. Rare exceptions.
Yeah. No, we got our licks in.
Yeah, we did, but not enough. Not enough.
Oh, yeah.
And then, they come out with the wonderful book of the Outpost. That was a treat.
Yeah. So we get back from Afghanistan, 2010. That was you were gone shortly after that, weren't you? I didn't see much of you after that.
I was on recruiting orders in January before we even got back. So yeah, we got back. Man, what the fuck did they have me do? At some point I went to school, but I think at that point, everybody who was on orders kind of got just separated. People were coming in. I think my replacement had showed up not long after we got back. So he just kind of took over and I got shuffled off, somewhere else. And then I went off to recruiting school with Sergeant McCready and somebody else was there with me. The biggest one was me, McCready, and Moore went off to recruiting school. And that was kind of the end of it. I don't remember. I didn't talk to anybody for quite a while, if I remember right.
Yeah, I don't think I talked to you much until that first reunion in 2015.
Yep. I think honestly at that time, I had tried to forget. Tried to bury it, drink it, drown it with alcohol, pretend that it never happened. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to hear about it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to be reminded of it. So I just kind of stuck my head in the sand and tried to pretend that it never happened. And somehow, recruiting school was a real treat. I mean, if you ever want to know where all of the slick sleeve people in the Army are, that's where they were, at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, TRADOC. Right when we get there, E7s and E8s, no combat patches, no nothing.
It blows my mind that you can achieve that rank without ever, deploying.
Well, it gets better. It gets better because then they're telling you about leadership,
right?
What it takes to be an effective leader, what it takes to be a good Army NCO. And I remember one day the whole thing was, being a recruiter is being able to tell your Army story. And so it was my turn. And I got up and, I was like, well, I joined the Army. I deployed. Came back, trained up, deployed again. Came back, trained up, deployed again. And here I am. And they yelled at me. That's not a good story. Nobody's going to want to join the Army. And you got to have something better, Tell us about the time you went to college. I was like, I didn't go to college. Well, tell us about, some good thing that happened. Nothing good really happened. I'm just kind of looking at him with, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And yeah, and they were trying to admonish me about this, like, you gotta sell the Army. And at that point in my life, I was just like, I don't know how the fuck I ended up here. I was told the only way to get out of this was to fail my psych evaluation. I didn't necessarily want to do that because I still thought I might want to end up staying in the Army. And I thought it might be a good break. I still held out some hope. And actually, it worked out pretty well. I ended up coming back to the same recruiting station I joined out of. So that's how I ended up back here in my hometown. But my time on recruiting duty was, my Army story was pretty accurate. If somebody wanted to join the infantry, I told them exactly what that meant. If they wanted to be a scout, 13 Fox, 13 Bravo, any type of combat arms job, I told them exactly what it was. You're going to deploy. Your first unit is going to be a deploying unit because that's how that works. They're going to man up a unit that's getting ready to go. So think twice, make sure that's really what you want to do, because once you put on the uniform, you can't just say, I don't want to do it anymore. And surprisingly, I actually had a pretty high level of success with that, because a lot of people, I guess they're a little more brave than I thought they were. Honesty and actually was pretty successful.
Honesty goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of surprise and shock, especially from parents. I think they thought that I was going to sugarcoat it and bullshit them, but no, I'm telling exactly what it was. And actually, I know I put in one successful special forces contract. I put an officer in. I put a couple Rangers in, and a lot of combat arms guys, and some other assorted. Actually, I put 113 Fox in. It was kind of a funny story because his dad was we have a ferry system out here to get across the Sound over to Seattle, and the guy's dad was a captain on one of the ferry boats, and he didn't want his kid to join the army. And all this kid wanted to do was be a 13 Fox. I want to be a forward observer. Only thing he wanted to do. Didn't want to do anything else. And mind you, this kid, he's probably about 130 pounds soaking wet, just a little sawed off kid. But, size doesn't really mean a whole lot. I've met some small guys that were tougher than shit. I've met some big guys that were, the biggest vaginers you could have. So I didn't think nothing of it. He was smart. He passed the ASVAB, no problem. So I put him in. And then about 3 weeks later, the dad stops by and says the kid quit. 3 weeks into basic training, couldn't take it no more and quit.
You never know. A lot of the guys who talk the biggest shit before any sort of hardship happens, and they fold.
Yeah. But I tried to tell them straight up. I didn't sugarcoat it, let them know exactly what to expect. This is what you're gonna have. It's gonna suck at first, and you're gonna go deploy. But that was that. And then about, it was within the first 6 months of recruiting duty, I started to kind of get the idea I was getting out. The two big crimes on that duty is stealing the government gas with the gas card, and then dipping the depths, as they call it. Fucking your recruits, the high school girls. So within the first 6 months, our company first sergeant got caught stealing gas, and he was allowed to retire as an E8, which I thought was kind of a slap in the face. And then probably about another 6 months, 8 months after that, one of the guys in my station got caught having an extramarital affair, and letter of reprimand. No demotion, no Article 15, nothing. Letter of reprimand, sent back to the Army. So that really, on top of everything else that happened with Keating and with all these other things, that just really soured me on the fact that I was, putting my life in someone's hands that, may or may not be worth a shit. I couldn't accept that anymore. So that's when I made that decision I had to get out. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. I'd kind of held out hope because Sergeant Major Wilson had been a recruiter previously. So I did hold out a little bit of hope that I could come back after being a recruiter and be successful. But at that point, when all that happened, I was like, no, there's no way. I can't do it anymore. So then I just ETS'd. 2 days shy of 10 years.
Oh yeah. Well, you've got to do more than a lot of people.
Considering it started off as friends going just to fuck around, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of a weird, 10-year chunk of life, but yeah. And then, well, because of the Army, I found, so I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. I was raised by my grandfather, and he was kind of a quieter guy, but I knew he'd served in the military. He was in the Air Force, but while I was in the Army, I found out that his brother had been, he was a Navy and Army through various conflicts. I guess that's how they did things back then. Like, you could serve in one branch during one conflict, and then you could actually go and enlist in another one later on. So he was in the Army during the Korean War and was a POW for about 3 years in the Korean War. So I didn't realize I had as much military history in my family as I did. And I knew he was in the Air Force for 20 years, but his brother had been Army and Navy. And then, couldn't find out my actual father had been in the Navy. But just little stuff like that changed the dynamic between us, and we actually had a better relationship, strictly because of the military, strictly because I joined. There's a lot of good that came of it. It allowed me to get my current job with, Department of Defense. So it's continued to serve well for me.
Hell yeah. You got any parting words?
Well, I mean, I don't know, what people want to hear, what they want to know, if this is something that they're just, something for entertainment. But if you're watching The Outpost, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. It's an interesting film. I'll say that. There's quite a bit of fiction to be had in there. If you want to read something, read Red Platoon. Anything other than that, if you're thinking about joining the military and you're watching this, it is what you make of it to some extent. But you're taking your hands off the wheel. Once you sign that contract, a lot of things are out of your control. But Mr. Knight, you're an excellent human being, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to come shoot the shit with you.
Thanks for coming.
No, it's always good to catch up with you, man. I miss you guys tremendously, and look forward to seeing you guys here in a couple months now, I guess, right?
About a month and a half.
About a month and a half. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you.
Hell yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop this.